Ridge arrived at the Forrester estate that evening brimming with confidence, certain that nothing could derail the once-in-a-lifetime reveal Taylor had promised at their carefully orchestrated family gathering. He stepped onto the polished marble terrace just as twilight painted the sky in bruised purples and golds, his heart light with anticipation of the romantic gesture he believed he was about to bestow upon his beloved. Inside, the chatter of close friends and relatives filled the grand hall, Steffi greeting Liam with a teasing smile, Hope fluttering around like a golden-winged sprite, and Katie toasting quietly in the corner with Phil, neither suspecting the storm about to break. Taylor hovered near the center of the room, her breath catching as she watched Ridge take his place beside her, ring box concealed in his pocket like an ace up her sleeve. From the moment the first guests arrived, Taylor had masterminded every detail. The soft glow of candlelight framing the ornate columns, the delicate florist's arrangements cascading from every table, the soft strains of a string quartet tasked with playing the perfect love theme at precisely 8:15 p.m. tonight. Taylor would force Ridge to kneel before all assembled and promise her forever with the exchange of a ring she had secretly provided. An heirloom from her own family, meant to symbolize a bond no one could ever sever. Yet Taylor's plan had another, darker layer. Long before the toasts began, she and Nick had slipped into the library where Brooke sat, reviewing notes for an upcoming board meeting. In hushed tones they'd conspired to slip a mild sedative into Brooke's water glass, enough to dull her senses, but not so much as to cause a medical emergency. On the understanding that once she was groggy, Nick would escort her upstairs under the guise of concern, set her gently on his own chaise lounge, and allow nature to take its course. With Brooke out of commission, Taylor believed Ridge's full attention would be hers alone, his gaze unshakably fixed on her radiant face, her triumphant smile, the moment he fell to one knee. In Taylor's mind, this was the ambush of a lifetime. The pivot that would rewrite their story, erase years of betrayal and second-guessing, and catapult her into the role she truly deserved, Ridge's devoted fiancée, the woman who had outmaneuvered all others and claimed her rightful place at his side. Everything had been calculated to perfection until Ridge, driven by a nagging doubt he could not name, stayed a moment longer in his study before joining the party. There on his desk lay his phone open to a string of messages he hadn't meant to see, Taylor's instructions to Nick, precise timestamps detailing when to drug Brooke, how to calm her should she protest, even which bedroom to use afterward. Beneath those lay Nick's responses, initial hesitation followed by confirmation, laced with excitement at the prospect of finally being with Brooke in a way he'd always fantasized. Ridge's blood ran cold, his pulse thundered in his ears. The ring box in his pocket felt suddenly like a weight of lead. Taylor's scheme had blindsided everyone until now. He slipped the phone into his jacket and strode toward the grand double doors, his jaw set, resolve flaring. The quartet's music swelled as he entered, the crystal chandeliers reflecting off his stern gaze. Taylor's heart clenched when she saw him coming. She straightened, expecting him to kneel, expecting cheers. Instead, Ridge moved to the center of the room, held up the phone so all could see the glowing screen, and spoke in a voice as calm as it was devastating. "Taylor, care to explain these messages? Care to tell our friends and family why you felt the need to drug Brooke tonight?" A hush fell. Brooke, still clutching her water glass, looked down at her trembling hands, confused. Nick's face went pale, his eyes darting from Taylor to Ridge. The assembled guests exchanged stunned whispers. Was it true? Had Taylor truly betrayed them so cruelly? Taylor's carefully composed facade shattered. She opened her mouth to retort, then closed it as Ridge advanced, his boots echoing on the marble. "This ends now," he said quietly, and in that moment every film of confidence drained from Taylor's eyes. The ring box slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Guests gasped. Brooke staggered, the sedative's effects finally catching up with her. Nick moved to help her, his previous bravado replaced by guilt. Taylor tried to salvage the moment, begged Ridge to call off his accusations, to let her explain, to understand, but no one listened. Ridge lifted the ring box, unopened, and placed it on the nearest table. "Our wedding is off," he declared, voice breaking with betrayal. "All of it over." Taylor's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, face buried in her hands. Brooke's blurred vision cleared enough to see Ridge standing over her, fury and pain warring in his eyes. Nick knelt beside her, voice soft. "Babe, are you all right?" Brooke blinked, confusion swirling as she tried to recall the last hours. There was a warmth in Nick's voice, a tenderness she couldn't ignore. Despite the haze at the edges of her mind, she felt a surprising flutter at the memory of being in his arms, the electric touch of his hand on her back as she dozed. A part of her, the part that had always respected Ridge's steadiness, recoiled, but another part, long curious about the spark she and Nick never admitted, leaned forward in intrigue. She looked up at Ridge, saw the disappointment etched into his face, and then at Nick, whose eyes brimmed with concern and something deeper. In that charged silence, Brooke made her choice. She placed a hand on Nick's shoulder and whispered, "I thank you." Ridge, devastated, turned away. The party dissolved into chaos. Family members clustered in shocked groups, the quartet fell silent, and the only sound was Taylor's sobs and the low murmur of scandal rippling through the Forrester name. Brooke allowed Nick to guide her toward the library, where she collapsed onto the chaise lounge, and he knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You did okay," he murmured, and she found herself nodding, the room spinning, but her heart oddly steady. Outside, Ridge retreated to his study, sank into his leather chair, and reopened the incriminating messages, each one a dagger to the truth he thought he knew. Taylor, crumpled on the marble floor, was helped to her feet by Steffi, whose eyes were hard with betrayal. As Ridge's final words echoed in the hall, "You are finished with this family," the night ended not with celebration, but with the unraveling of legacies, the shattering of trust, and the birth of a scandal that would haunt them all. In the days that followed, the Forrester empire reeled, board meetings postponed, investors demanding answers, the fashion world buzzing with rumor. Taylor disappeared into her private quarters, refusing calls. Nick stood by Brooke's side as she regained her strength, fielding questions about Ridge's cold withdrawal, and Ridge, once unshakable, found himself questioning every relationship he'd ever trusted. Brooke, waking each morning to Nick's gentle smile, felt the pull of a new chapter. One as dangerous as it was thrilling. Taylor, confined by her own machinations, realized too late that in trying to trap Ridge, she had ensnared herself in ruin, losing not only a wedding but her standing, her dignity, and perhaps the forgiveness of the man she once loved. And Ridge, holding the abandoned ring in his hand, knew that the wedding bells he had so eagerly awaited would never ring, not for Taylor, not for him. Not until the wounds this night inflicted healed into truths he could no longer deny. In the days that followed the shattered evening at the Forrester estate, Taylor Hayes moved through the mansion like a ghost, collecting the few belongings she could bear to touch before slipping away in the gray dawn. Word of her departure spread through Los Angeles like wildfire. The woman who once held Ridge Forrester's heart was gone, her sleek black SUV gliding through the city streets before disappearing onto the freeway, bound for who knew where. In her wake remained a swirl of unanswered questions and broken loyalties. Brooke and Nick awoke each morning to the hush of the now empty wing where Taylor's footsteps had echoed. a silence punctuated only by the distant hum of the string quartets in used sheet music and the rustle of security memos cautioning executives to distance themselves from scandal. Ridge, ever the patriarch, found himself alone in the great hall, the portrait of his ancestors gazing down with disapproval he could almost feel upon his shoulders. He walked its corridors on restless nights, where memories of Taylor's tender words haunted the marble and crystal. Yet he never allowed himself the luxury of regret for long. Forrester Creations teetered on the edge of collapse under the weight of bad press and investor jitters, and he had a company to save, a legacy to protect. He convened emergency board meetings in sunlit conference rooms, steered conversations toward new lines and fresh designs, and in every gesture reminded those around him that the Forrester name still represented strength, style, and unbreakable resolve. Brooke, meanwhile, found herself at a crossroads she had never anticipated. With Taylor gone, the wounds left by betrayal ached. She and Nick, once casual confidants, discovered that the unexpected passion of that fateful night had altered their friendship forever. He escorted her through the halls to brainstorm sessions, their shoulders brushing under the glow of runway lights. She felt safe in his steadiness as Ridge felt fragmented. Nick's enthusiasm for her ideas rekindled her own creative spark. Together, they drafted proposals for a collaborative capsule collection that would marry Brooke's timeless elegance with Nick's avant-garde vision, a project meant not only to save the company's faltering stock, but to heal the fractures within the family. Yet every time Nick looked at her, concern and something deeper flickered in his eyes, and she wondered whether she had simply craved the thrill of rebellion or something more profound at risk. Ridge noticed the glances exchanged between them, but he chose to redirect his focus toward the future of the brand rather than the intimate dramas unfolding in its corridors. Across town, Steffi Forrester took the reins of public relations with a cool efficiency that surprised even her. She issued statements celebrating the company's resilience, arranged interviews with fashion magazines that praised Brooke and Nick's new direction, and allowed Ridge to emerge as the stabilizing force whose leadership would carry Forrester Creations through its darkest hour. She watched Ridge from the wings, saw the tight line of his shoulders, the way his gaze lingered on Brooke as she strategized at the drafting table, and felt a swell of maternal pride for the daughter she loved and a pang of something else she refused to name. Though mortal wounds had been inflicted on all sides, Steffi believed in the family's ability to renew itself, and she worked tirelessly to ensure that the world saw strength where only broken hearts still ached. Meanwhile, Taylor Hayes drove east, her destination a sprawling desert in Nevada where she had once retreated for serenity, seeking to escape the glare of cameras and the echoes of Ridge's betrayal. She rented a modest cottage on the edge of a ghost town, its wooden facades sun-bleached, tumbleweeds drifting by like reluctant confessions, to nurse her wounds and reconsider everything she thought she knew about love, ambition, and forgiveness. She filled journals with confessions of guilt and flashes of rage, sketches of the mansion's grand halls, and the curve of Ridge's shoulder at that dreadful moment he revealed her treachery. In the bitter nights, she dreamed of the ring box clattering to the marble floor, of Brooke's eyes widening in confusion, of Nick's hunger for a moment of passion that had been more experiment than destiny. Daylight offered no relief. The hot wind stung her cheeks like tears she refused to shed. She phoned only one person, an old mentor who once taught her to trust in her own worth, seeking counsel as she teetered between self-loathing and defiance. At dawn, she walked among the relics of the town's vanished prosperity and wondered whether she, too, had become a casualty of time and ambition. Back in Los Angeles, whispers of Taylor's exile lingered in the halls of Forrester Creations long after the boardroom dust settled. The Brooke, Nick collaboration dazzled the runway at Fashion Week, critics lauded its daring sophistication, and investors breathed easier. Ridge stood at the back of the crowd as models filed by, feeling the thrill of survival but also the ache of absence. He knew that without Taylor's fierce intelligence the family would never be whole again, even if her duplicity had forced his hand. Brooke, basking in the glow of success, felt a pang of sorrow for the woman she had once called friend. Nick, beside her, whispered congratulations but did not meet her gaze when she thanked him with trembling lips. Months passed. Taylor remained in her desert refuge, her phone rarely lighting up. When it did, it was with messages from Ridge's assistant informing her that her name had been quietly removed from all company documents, that the Forrester name no longer had place for her. She watched as social media feeds filled with photographs of Brooke and Nick toasting champagne, as headlines proclaimed the dawn of a new era for the fashion house she had helped to build. Each image was a knife twisting in her chest. Yet beneath her pain a resolute spark ignited. She resolved to reclaim her life on her own terms. She completed a small medical study in Las Vegas, volunteered at a free clinic in Reno, and found solace in helping others even as she wondered whether any act of redemption could ever reach the depths of her transgression. In Los Angeles, the Forrester family moved forward, but the memory of Taylor's betrayal remained a cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. Ridge, now more guarded, placed the abandoned ring box in a locked drawer of his private safe, a stark reminder that love untempered by trust was a fire that could consume even the strongest foundations. Brooke, wearied by the lessons of deceit and desire, steeled herself to lead with integrity, mindful of the power she wielded and the wounds it could inflict. Nick, chastened by his role in Taylor's scheme, dedicated himself to the art of design, channeling his guilt into creativity rather than conquest. And far away, in the empty streets of the ghost town, Taylor Hayes looked up at the endless sky and, for the first time in months, allowed herself to breathe, and to hope that one day her return would not be met with whispers of scandal, but with the possibility of forgiveness and a second chance at the love she had sacrificed so recklessly.